All right. Come on in, sit down. Jim, take a load off. Sit down. Hi, everybody. I am Ari Blum, and I am the Chief Executive Officer of Inside Track. And Inside Track creates increased conversion, retention, and graduation rates for colleges and universities through a mix of one-on-one coaching powered by predictive analytics and student-facing technologies to drive those improvements. And while we serve most sectors across the higher ed landscape today, given the context of this conference and everything going on in the industry, I'm primarily going to focus on the online segment that we serve. About 70 or 80% of the students that we serve are in online institutions. And we're seeing, being at this conflux of retention orientation and outcomes orientation, really seeing a lot of momentum from that. So I'm going to talk about that today, if I can make the slide go, which I can. So what's going on in the landscape right now? We're seeing an incredible conflux of two major pressures on colleges and universities that are somewhat in conflict with each other. On one hand, colleges and universities are being asked to contain costs, to reduce costs, as many of you have been listening to and hearing about. On the other hand, they're being asked to improve outcomes. So basically, the age-old iron triangle, more with less. We want you to actually reduce costs and improve outcomes at the same time. How are you going to do that? Well, one of the answers has been online education. As many of you know, there's a lot of growth in online education. One of the reasons for that is that in an online program, particularly for a public state institution, they're able to charge a lot more tuition than they're able to charge for an in-state student. That provides more ample resources for investing in services that can improve outcomes. The other reason is that in an online service delivery model, after the upfront investment cost, the actual ongoing cost to serve the student is lower, leading to a lower cost environment. Problem is, lots of people want out of this particular box in the same way, hence lots of demand and focus on online education. And if you've been spending time here at this conference, you're seeing a ton of people focusing dollars and attention in building online programs. So what does that mean? It means more competition, whether it's MOOCs, competency-based online learning, the for-profits, ASU Online, and other nonprofit online programs powered by 2U, or EMBANET, or Pearson, or any of the multitude of players out there. You're just seeing a lot of people go after the same students, because while there are more students coming into online programs every year, there is nonetheless a relatively finite number. So that increased focus on acquiring new students is driving up that cost of acquisition. And a statistic I heard just earlier today, in the Los Angeles market, the cost for education-related AdWords, for example, for an MBA program, has more than tripled in the last 4 months. The amount of dollars being pummeled at the advertising of these students is just increasing the cost of acquisition. So how do colleges and universities get tuition revenue? They get it in two ways. They get it from new students, and they get it from continuing students. So if new students are getting more expensive, continuing students become a lot more important. And that's where Inside Track comes in, particularly on the retention side, as we think about trying to help these institutions build for the long haul, build strength into their student populations, and realize incremental dollars from retaining those students over the long term. So how are institutions doing? I'm going to I had a different slide here that Jenny promised me would be here, but this one, we can go back to this one instead, and I'll just tell you. So how are institutions doing on improving retention rates? The answer is not very well. In particular, if you look at online programs and you calculate the graduation rate on a cohort basis, so for 1,000 students who start, how many graduate? That number looks like something like 250 students, somewhere around 25% of students who start an online program graduate, even including the students who are able to move beyond that program to, say, transfer to another program. That means 75% of the students are not graduating. If you then look at the amount of time it's taking those students who do graduate to graduate, you're looking at roughly an average of 3 years. How long are the other 75% in school? They're in school an average of 7 months. So that distinction, between the student who comes to that institution prepared and ready to graduate, taking on average 3 years, and that student who does not graduate, staying on average 7 months, yes, some stay longer and some stay shorter, denominates what I think is the challenge of this situation. A student who comes into school and only stays 4, 5, 6, or 7 months is nowhere near ready to graduate. It's an incredibly hard nut to crack because you're not just talking about giving that student one additional little piece of information or skill or a slightly more easy to follow textbook. You're talking about some core skills that that student does not have, particularly in this marketplace that's focused on adult learners with many life challenges associated with going to school, that in order for them to go from going to school for 4, 5, or 6 months before they drop out to actually graduating, you're just talking about a really big difference. So Inside Track has spent the last 10 years working on that issue. That question of how can we build skills in students that enable them to go that long haul, particularly in a population that is not coming in prepared to do so. Some of those skills might look like time management. Some of those skills might look like self-advocacy. Some of those skills might look like understanding their own motivation for being in school and staying connected to that. So how does Inside Track do that? If I went the right direction, I would tell you that we do that through a combination of 4 key elements. Number 1, people. If you're going to try to connect with students in this situation, you need to be able to have somebody who can connect with them intuitively, with emotional intelligence, building these skills and helping students come to these learnings on their own. But people aren't enough. That's an expensive value proposition to think about putting that kind of person against a large multitude of students. You need to be able to focus people in an effective way and leverage them with technology. So the methodologies that we've developed are around focus. They're both around the skill building that we do with students, but as importantly, we're using the data set we've built over the last 10 years, over 500,000 students coached, often in A/B controlled studies, to really understand where is the most valuable student for us to put that effort against? How much effort do we need to put against that student in order to actually realize that return that I'm talking about? And how do we not either put too much effort into an individual student, or how do we avoid finding a student for whom the amount of effort required to get them to graduation would be not cost effective? So we do that through a series of predictive analytic models that we've built on our data set, both in conjunction with schools individually and in a generic sense, to work with our institutions, to look at the student population that they serve, to build a unique, comprehensive, but customized program where we're segmenting their student types and applying the right mix of solution to each student, be that direct one-on-one coaching, powered by this predictive analytics work and our data set, or be it a more technology-oriented interface for that student to engage with. We have been doing this, as I said, for 10 years. On average, our methodology has been studied by Stanford in 2010. Stanford published a report that was picked up by the National Bureau of Economic Research, showing that our solution increases retention and graduation rates by 10 to 15%, which, if you can do the math on the tuition dollars, is a material return on investment for that institution, particularly as cost of acquiring students continues to get higher. I am going to skip most of the slides, given our time and the 9-minute, to just this last one, which is that we're proud to have been awarded Fast Company's top 10 most innovative in higher ed just 2 months ago. I think it's a reflection of the work that we've done, the database that we've built, and the scale at which we are operating. So I will leave, it looks like, at least 15 seconds for a question. For which there isn't one, so thank you very much.